Hello and welcome to today's review of the Transformers 2007 movie Real Gear Robots, Meantime and Midnighter XR4. Now, key thing to point out here, two different times on these guys. Now, I do not know fully if these would be the same if they were both the Hasbro releases, but I can confirm that my Meantime is the Takara release. I got this from Yahoo Japan using Bai. So there you go. He came with all the other Japanese ones. Midnighter is the only Hasbro release I have. So for all I know, these are only different because of regional variances between Takara and Hasbro. But oh well, that's pretty irrelevant here. It's not going to add anything to either toy, if we're being honest. Generally though, all of that out of the way, I do like the watch mode on both of these guys. It's pretty cool. I definitely prefer the blue one, maybe. I don't know. The grey one feels... there's something oddly appealing about the grey one to me, and I don't really know what it is. Maybe it's things like the silver insignia, these red bits on the watch. The two-tone grey is a nice little choice, whereas this is just blue and orange. I think I might prefer the blue and grey. Which, it's something to point out. As for whether these fit, well, let's talk about that. Because I thought it'd be really cool if I had been able to go to TF Nation wearing this one. Because I already had this one prior to TFN. Sadly, my wrists are too big. Now I expect if it's not a child trying to wear this, it probably won't fit either. Or, if you're female and you have small wrists, maybe you could, I don't know, wear the Real Gear Robots watch. Yeah, I don't know, it's really stupid stuff, but these are toys, right? The whole idea is fun, so whatever way you find to have fun with these, it's all cool, right? It's a fair game. So generally, the watch mode is really cool. So we're just going to move on to our size comparison. So for our watch mode size comparison, here we have long view, speed dial, power up VT6, Ralph, Steve. Now generally the size comparison between all of these, perfectly fine, I'm loving how the watches look with everything else. It feels like, even though TF Wiki had stated that these were meant to be 1-to-1 scale or whatever, even though some of these are really not 1-to-1 scale, I do think the main idea was for them to all look similar in size to each other, and I generally think they've achieved that incredibly well. While I was doing some research yesterday, I discovered Bob Rawley was the Hasbro designer who helped get these made. I do not remember the name of the Japanese designer, so that sucks. But a little thing about Bob, while I'm talking about these Real Gears, is that he had a decent hand in some of the Statue 07 stuff and the non-transformable things alongside these. And then like for Universe and Classics, not Classics, just Universe really, he was like in charge of things like Cyclonus and Hound, which happen to be two of the best figures from that Universe 08 line. And yeah man, the fact he also helped design these guys, all of these, it's absolutely brilliant. But yeah, size comparison between all of this is pretty cool. Now if we kind of get the cell phone, this and this, you're almost ready for a little holiday trip. Just put them in your bag, and if they're functional, it could be the funniest thing in the world. Just, oh, don't mind me, I'm checking my Transformers watch, or don't mind me, just have to call some family on the Transformers phone. That might just be me. It might just be me being a bit silly, but I think generally as role play items, these are absolutely excellent. So moving on from here, our transformation. So let's talk about the robot modes for Midnighter and Meantime. So generally, these are cool. I do like the robot modes, and whilst I was saying I was there, I kind of preferred the bland grey watch. On the robot modes, I actually do much prefer Meantime. Just, this blue and orange does kind of look really nice in the bot mode. I definitely like the head sculpt on both of these. Brilliant little thing, It's got a nice little sculpted nose. Kind of a chin strap, I guess. Maybe he's got a blue jaw, I don't really know. Upon further inspection, it's not really zooming in, not focusing much on camera or whatever. But he definitely doesn't have a sculpted mouth. So yeah, anyway, the orange light piping on this is really cool as well. This is the first one of these so far that has light piping. I mean, Power Up had a clear plastic piece on the back of his head, but that's not really doing anything. So whatever. But these have red and orange light piping respectively. It does work somewhat. There you go. Nice glowy eyes. And then for the orange, brilliant stuff. I don't know, man. People complain about light piping because a lot of the time it just isn't done well. But I think when it works, if I could have Transformers with or without light piping, I will choose light piping every day of the week. That's just generally one of the things I like about old Transformers specifically, and every so often you might get a new figure that tries to pull it off. But anyway, generally, these are solid in robot mode. My main gripe really is the way these arms work. As you can see, this I think would be the preferred side for the arm to face. That way you don't see all the hollowness for whatever. Sadly, the joint that was used here is not universal, so it doesn't function on both sides. So you either have the clean arms without the gaps, but you can't use the elbow joint, or you have the hollowness to be able to use the elbow joint. It's kind of stupid, and the fact that they didn't even make the joint, it's not like a double joint or anything. You can't pull more than 90. It's truly disappointing. But hey, it's something that exists. I have no real gripes with it, it's whatever. But yeah, robot modes are cool. Main time's cooler. Let's move on to our size comparison. So for our robot mode size comparison, here we have 2007 movie Voyager class Ironhide, 2007 movie Deluxe class Swindle, 07's Legends class Bumblebee, Ralph, Steve. Now, generally, the size comparison between these is, all the same things as every other Real Gear robot so far. It's just solid. He's a nice kind of middle ground between your Legends, your Deluxes, a fair bit smaller than Ironhide, but he's a chunky boy. He's also very imbalanced, which hasn't been too much of a problem until now. He fell over while I was recording this, so you're not going to see that, but it happened. Anyway, this is all good. I'm perfectly fine with all of it. How everything looks together come to final review, which will be in 2 or 3 days now. We will have all of the Real Gears and Robot mode together just to kind of get one last look at everything. Same with the alt modes. But yeah, everything here is cool. Let's move on to articulation. So for the articulation on these two, I'm just going to do it all with one figure. Kind of the same reason why I reviewed these together, so I don't have to cover everything twice, There's no point on me putting out a separate review for each of these when I know I've got all the same notes on them besides the colours. What's the point? But anyway, so for the shoulders, you have this joint here, which is pinned. This goes up, like so, kind of level, comes down like so. Then if we kind of ignore that joint for the time being, there's a ball joint at the shoulder. Use them both, you get maximum up. And then you get that much down, which is kind of normal. It's the resting position for the arms. You can make them have monkey arms if you want. Elbows don't pull more than a 90. Absolutely horrible, given the sacrifices made for the elbow joint. like I mentioned before, this whole assembly, I wish it was just this way, and the fists will rotate around, whatever. Technically, you've got a kind of hinge section for the wrist. It's not practical for anything really besides the transformation. Head on this guy, it does wiggle, which is much better than power up. Then kind of go all the way around. A little bit of confused dog. That's it really. No up, tiny bit down. No waist due to the way the legs position themselves. Hip joints go banana split, which is nice to see, I guess. I definitely think I've missed it in some of these reviews, but some of the other figures do it too. Legs kick back that much, forwards that much, knees pull 90. It's kind of whatever, but it's what you get for using rectangles for the kind of general leg shapes. No toe bend, I guess. It sucks. Whatever. Thigh swivel goes all the way around, and that's really it for the articulation on both of them. Really. If I had to make any additional comments, I do love this. Isn't really articulation as such, but I do feel I should mention it. The stability on these guys is pretty good due to the way the toes fold around or whatever. Now, if you really felt weird, you can give them extra wide, chunky feet. It makes them very disproportionate, but you know what? What's the worst that can happen? No. But yeah, he just sits there nicely. So they both articulate the same. It's definitely better than Power Up so far. So I will reflect that in the final ranking, but it's definitely not what the first few of these are, like Speed Dial, our Long View, White Gorilla Guy, the camera, Spy Shot and High Score or whatever. These are kind of, they're just all right, middle of the road in terms of articulation. So let's move on to my final thoughts. So my final thoughts for Meantime and Midnighter, solid, I guess. The best thing these have going for them is the aesthetics across the board. I do like the designs of the robot modes. It's unique, this circular chest with these kind of appendages coming off it, and I like the head designs. The watch modes are cool. Transformation getting there is pretty solid. So overall, they're pretty cool. So for the aesthetics on this, we're giving them a 4.5 out of 5. The reason they're not a 5 is purely because of how these arms work. It's just not very pleasing to the eye to have these hollow sections on the front. Like I said, why couldn't they just have a universal joint here? It'd smooth off this section and the arm would bend both ways, and you wouldn't have to look at these ugly arms. But whatever, that's the only reason they're a 4.5. Transformation in these is, it's not perfect, but it's nothing difficult, nothing annoying. It's a 4, it's just good for what it is. You get robot to watch. Solid stuff. Articulation on these, like I said before, better than Power Up. So Power Up got 2, these guys are getting 3. All the extra range on the arms is mostly that, and they actually have like fairly movable heads comparative to Power Up. But in terms of head movement, it's not as good as, say, Spy Shot or the Monkey. Long View's got a bit of better head movement as well. But neither here nor there. I don't care too much about the head movement on these because they're so small and you don't expect to do too much with them. But hey, you get a 3 on articulation, and then value for money on these guys, well, it's a 4. Can't be a 5 because these don't particularly stand out to me. I don't think these are the most amazing thing in the world. But as I mentioned earlier, I think all of these could be really cool roleplay options for, I don't know, just doing whatever. Playing with them, I guess, if you're a child, Like I said, they're toys. So value for money on these just because they're solid, they feel reliable, and they are fun to just fiddle with. They're getting a 4. So that concludes this review. This has been AnimatedCHUG. And join me next time for another Real Gear Robots review.